Most people think walking away means giving up, that silence means defeat, that letting go means losing. But the Stoics saw it differently. They knew that sometimes the most powerful move is no move at all, because you don't always win by fighting harder. Sometimes you win by refusing to fight what doesn't deserve your energy. You stay too long in places that shrink you. You argue to be heard by people committed to misunderstanding you. You pour into things hoping they'll eventually give back. And each time, you get quieter inside. Not because you're at peace, but because you're tired. You weren't built for constant conflict. You weren't built to beg for respect. You weren't built to prove your worth over and over again in places that drain you. But you were built to choose, to discern, to walk when standing still starts to cost your soul. Epictetus said, "You don't control what people do, only how you respond." And sometimes the response isn't a counterattack. Sometimes it's walking away, not out of bitterness, out of clarity. Because when your presence no longer aligns with your peace, that's not a situation to fix. That's a message to exit. So why do people stay? Why do we remain in places where we're shrinking, where we're second-guessing every word, every move, every part of who we are? It's not because we're loyal. It's because we're afraid. Afraid of conflict, afraid of regret, afraid of being called selfish, ungrateful. Too much. We tell ourselves walking away means failure, that it's rude, that it's quitting. But here's what the Stoics knew. Walking away isn't weakness, it's discernment. It's the ability to say, this path no longer honors who I'm becoming, and I refuse to betray myself just to avoid discomfort. Because staying out of guilt is still a choice, and every day you choose to stay where your energy dies. You teach your nervous system that betraying yourself is normal. That's how you lose your peace, not in one big blowout, but in a slow erosion of boundaries, of values, of voice. And the longer you stay, the harder it gets to tell the difference between what's truly yours and what you've just learned to tolerate. But you weren't made to tolerate everything. You weren't made to endure places that force you to shrink so others can feel tall. You were made to move with purpose, and purpose requires space. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak on loyalty to dysfunction. He spoke of alignment, of duty to reason, of leaving behind what no longer fits the weight of your mission. And sometimes, walking away isn't just self-preservation. It's the first step toward freedom. If you've made it this far, you already know. You've outgrown the version of yourself that begged to be understood, that explained everything, that stayed polite in rooms that drained you. You're not here to be bitter, you're here to be clear. And clarity demands separation. Separation from the guilt that kept you stuck, from the roles you never chose, from the people who only show love when you shrink to fit their comfort. Because you're not meant to live in a constant loop of maybe it'll change. You're meant to live in rhythm, with your values, your peace, your purpose. And every time you honor that rhythm, even in silence, you reclaim a piece of your strength. That's what this space is about. Not content, not motivation, but alignment. Realignment with your own center. Not the world's approval, not their timeline, yours. So if this message isn't just something you watched, but something you felt, if it speaks to a voice you've been ignoring for too long, then you know what to do. Subscribe, not for more words, for more reminders that you're not alone, that your peace is valid, that walking away is not weakness, it's wisdom in motion. And if you're ready to train that kind of wisdom, this is where we do it. Quietly, relentlessly, daily. Something shifts the moment you walk away. Not in them, in you. Your breath gets deeper, your thoughts get clearer, and that pressure in your chest, it finally starts to lift. Not because the situation changed, but because you did. You stopped asking for closure. You stopped replaying conversations in your head, trying to find the perfect words. You stopped hoping someone else would realize your worth, because you realized you don't need their permission to protect your peace. And suddenly, the silence you were afraid of becomes your sanctuary. The solitude you resisted becomes your training ground. You start moving different. You don't over-explain. You don't chase. You don't apologize for needing space to breathe and rebuild. And people feel it, not because you announced it, but because your energy has changed. You're no longer trying to be chosen. You've chosen yourself. This is what Stoics understood long before it became trendy. That peace isn't found in fixing everything. It's found in walking away from what refuses to be fixed. Because healing doesn't always happen through repair. Sometimes, it happens through release. And when you release what's been weighing you down, you rise. Not in anger, not in drama, but in power. When you walk away for the right reasons, you don't lose anything. You gain clarity. You gain energy. You gain yourself. For the first time in a long time, your days aren't filtered through anxiety. You're not rehearsing what to say, how to shrink, how to keep the peace that was never real in the first place. You just exist. And that existence, clean, calm, rooted, is worth more than any approval you could have begged for. You realize you don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to keep proving you're good enough. You don't need to keep fighting for space in places that never valued your voice to begin with. That's the freedom Stoics trained for, the kind that comes not from isolation, but from inner alignment. Because when your actions finally reflect your values, your peace stops depending on anyone else's behavior. You start building again, but this time, with standards. You don't open doors that cost you clarity. You don't entertain energy that's rooted in chaos. You don't question your gut. You honor it. And when people ask, "Why did you leave?" you don't give a speech. You just smile, because the answer is written all over your life now. Peace, stillness, direction. And that is the kind of power that speaks without a word. Now you understand. Walking away isn't abandonment, it's alignment. It's when you stop waiting for a situation to validate your worth, and you start enforcing it yourself. It's when silence becomes your boundary, when space becomes sacred, when your presence becomes a privilege, not something to be managed by everyone's expectations. The Stoics never said, "Fight to be liked." They said, "Live in accordance with nature," and your nature doesn't beg. So you stop chasing closure. You stop waiting for apologies. You stop needing anyone to get it, because now you get it. You were never too sensitive. You were just too silent about what drained you. And the moment you decided your peace mattered more than proving a point, you stepped into power most people never taste. The world will call it selfish, cold, detached. But let them talk. You'll be too busy healing in peace to answer back. So here's the real question you have to ask yourself now. What are you still holding on to, that your future self will wish you'd had the strength to walk away from sooner?